friends. Welcome to another edition of our podcast called Innovate, Ignite, and Inspire. We have a special guest with us today. I am Dr. Flo Barbie Watkins, and I serve as the lead presbyter for vision and collaboration. And today we have Reverend Leigh Anne Ring, who is my colleague, my sister, and my friend. She serves as the presbyter for relational care. Welcome, Leigh Anne, to this podcast.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
I am so excited because what you do for the Presbytery of the James is amazing. So let's kind of dig into that journey a little bit.
Sure.
Great. So tell me a little bit about your role, what you do as the presbyter for relational care, and how you got here.
Well, that could be a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. So I am a certified Christian educator and have served the church for many years in that role. So one of the things that the church has always been for me is family. I'm a preacher's kid, and so that is part of my identity. I don't think I can separate my understanding of family and my understanding of who God is. And so when it was time to graduate from college and figure out what was next, Presbyterian School of Christian Education here in Richmond was the next place that felt like home. And so I got my master's degree in Christian Ed there and became a certified Christian educator and served the church for many years in that role. And then there was this thing that happens when you're doing some wrestling with God and you don't even know you're wrestling. And then that was what the call to return to seminary felt like to me. And it took a long amount of wrestling because I'm a little stubborn. And so the return to the seminary to pursue the master's degree in divinity was a big jump. And the road between the two is called brook. And I always said I would never cross the brook because this call to educational ministry is important for the church. And I had to get over that I wasn't leaving that call behind, but that I was adding to it. So returning to seminary, being back in the classroom, that was maybe the most frightening thing I've ever done. And as a part of that, then I had to talk to this family that I have in the Presbytery of the James and talk about a different identity when I wanted to pursue this role as the presbyter for relational care.
Yeah.
So programming, they knew I could do that. They knew about those leadership skills. They knew about the programming, but that pastoral care piece, that relational care, that sitting and sharing your story and listening to your story and offering you care and support, that was a new identity for me in this presbytery. So, going through that interview process and saying, hey, I know you think this, but also listen to this, and to have that search team affirm that call was a powerful piece of the whole journey for me. And so to be in this role as the one of the three of us who has been in the presbytery for a while, it just feels like a natural progression to me of the call of God on my life to serve in this way.
Yeah. That's good. That's real good. I like that. So in your role of the presbyter for relational care, tell us a little bit about what that looks like for people who might say, well, what is that?
I think the idea is that we want to really work on our connection in the Presbytery of the James.
Yeah.
And part of that need is to have somebody who is focusing on the how are you doing piece. And so I feel like that's my piece of this goal for the presbytery as we move forward, that how are you doing piece. Because a lot of work in the presbytery needs to happen to keep the ministry going, to keep the things going that we know have to happen in the church and in the ministry. But that piece of how are you doing right now in this space? And sometimes that's in a space when you need it and you reach out and ask for it, but sometimes it's in the space when you didn't even know it was coming. And that's the sweet spot. We know how to respond to someone when they say, hey, I need help. And we can respond to that. And that's an important question. And I'm glad that people reach out and ask for help. But it's also that check-in of, hey, let's go to lunch. And in that conversation, there's a connection that the person didn't even know that they were hungry or thirsty for. And I'm able not to quench any of that on my own. And certainly that's a spirit thing and not my thing. But that presence of you're not alone as you travel whatever part of this journey. So I think the relational care is well named. It's a companionship. It's a come along. I am coming along with you. I'm coming beside you, and you're not alone in this hard work that you're doing.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good, and that's so necessary for a presbytery to think enough of its minister members, its educators, its commissioned pastors to say you're important enough to us for us to call someone in just that specific way. That's brave, that's courageous, and that's also a lot of compassion for the Presbytery of the James. So I guess my next question would be, well, what are some of the challenges that you have either seen up close and personal or heard as relates to the things that are challenging some of our pastors in the Presbytery of the James?
I think the work can be isolating, as I've said before. I think you can, when you are a pastor serving a congregation and you don't have a team like we have a team, you're trying to do this work on your own. You're doing this vision work. You're trying to do all the pieces that we have, the vision and the leadership pieces, the relational care pieces, the programming pieces, all by yourself. And you, without somebody else coming along beside of you, you can get really focused in, and you lose that sort of sense of companionship along the way, of collegiality, because we think differently, and it's better when we're thinking together than on our own. Right. So I don't remember what your question was.
Some of the challenges
some of the challenges are, the isolation that you feel in the position, and also it's a tough position. It's a tough thing to be speaking God's word to a world that is so fragmented and so in need of care and so in need of love, and at the same time so willing to hold on to things that they need to let go of, and being able to tell a congregation to let go of some things, that's a tough job. And to be able to, I don't even know. So we're going to cut all that, and we're going to say that the challenge of remembering the call, remembering that piece, that little voice that spoke to you, remembering all the voices that confirmed that call, that's an important piece when you're so frustrated in your position, to remember the joy and the successes that you've had in your ministry. To not, I think it's a challenge for people with their families, for churches, congregations, and how they deal with pastors and their whole families. I think we need to spend more time talking to spouses of pastors and offering care and companionship and traveling along that journey. That's been a place of hard stuff for ministers to have to think about. Knowing when it's time to leave and knowing when it's time to stay, doing that kind of discernment piece, not knowing what to do next, not knowing what to do in the face of fill in the blank challenge that's going on in that particular area. All of these kinds of things can start to feel very heavy and difficult for one person to carry around. So that's some of the things that I know that our pastors can deal with and are dealing with. Yeah.
You mentioned something about the whole dynamics of family and spouses and things of that nature, and I have seen it in which when that church calls a pastor, that they expect that spouse to be there every Sunday to teach Sunday school classes, or if you play the piano, to play the piano. They expect for that spouse to be an integral part of that church. I've also seen it in which that spouse doesn't even attend that church because that pastor has said, you called me. You did not call my spouse. So it sounds like, even helping pastors navigate what role do you see your spouse in this call, so that it's not too much and it's not too little, and so that the focus doesn't end up being on the spouse and what they are doing and not doing versus the ministry that ministry has been called to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hope that I'm a safe place to have that conversation with, to sort of test out how you think things sound before you maybe have the courage to have that conversation with your personnel ministry or with the session.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Because, we both have spouses, and my spouse is Catholic, so.
Right.
So, I don't have any worries.
I converted my spouse from Episcopalian, so.
Well, yeah. So tell me this. You talked about, the burnout, the loneliness, the disconnect. What could self-care then look like for our leaders in our congregations, our pastors and educators and commissioned pastors? What could self-care look like from the level of the presbytery? Not you going to get your massage or getting pedicures and all that kind of stuff, because that's what I do. But what could the presbytery consider as, how do we care for our pastors?
I think one of the first important steps that we do is we include in our terms of call study leave and vacation time as mandatory minimums. And we put a dollar amount with the continuing education piece. I think that speaks to the value that we see in not just the work that you're going to do, but the rest that you're going to do from that work, and also the continuing education piece of there's always something to learn. And we should always be thinking about what else we could be learning. I would love for us to also put some sabbatical guidelines in our minimum terms of call.
Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that we can start talking about this work is difficult work, and you need to build some time away in order for your ministry to go well and the congregation to go well. So I think that's a great thing that we're already doing. I think there are ways that we can improve that. And I think also as a presbytery, we model that. I think one of the important parts of our terms of call when we were called into these new roles is the addition of coaching. That's been invaluable to me just in the last 6 months of being able to connect. We have our own coaches. We have a coach for the team. I think that kind of modeling for the presbytery is important so that we can say, hey, this is how I'm spending some of my time, and these are the things that have been pointed out to me, and this is how I've grown. And so I think self-care looks like realizing that you can't carry this on your own, and that you don't have every single skill that you need and the congregation needs, and you need some places of input. And so I think maybe another part for the presbytery is to also be that voice. Hey, where did you take your last vacation? When did you take your last vacation? How are you taking care of yourself? Pointedly asking those questions with the expectation that they're doing it, and if they're not, that they will, that they'll get started.
Good stuff. Self-care is not selfish.
Right.
And I know that, there are different ways that ministers have address their vacation. Some take the month of August off so they can have a good chunk of time. But like you said, in our system, we get 4 weeks of vacation and 2 weeks of study leave. That means every 2 months you ought to either be resting or learning something. You know, if you want to divide it out over the entire year. Good stuff. So you, as an individual, we have 98 congregations. We have probably double or triple ministers. So you can't do this by yourself. It's impossible. Do you have any ideas about maybe cohorts or peer groups that you'd like to kind of give us a hint at what you're thinking? I mean, you don't have to tell it all the details, but just kind of give us a little bit about what could that look like for us.
Well, I think in this initial part of the call, I'm still in my listening phase, and I'm trying not to get ahead of myself.
Okay.
Because I think it's important not to do something that I think is helpful. I think it's important to do something that pastors are asking for. Now, sometimes pastors don't know what they need, and I'm fine at telling people what to do. It's one of my spiritual gifts. But I do think that I need to start with listening. I need to meet with folks, not for the whole year. It's not going to take a whole year to sort of get those things started, but to begin to have an idea of what the real needs are in the presbytery. I don't want to get ahead and not meet that need instead. So, but I do think that the spouses of pastors is high. I mean, I've mentioned it before. It's important to me. It's something that's on my radar as growing up in the family of a minister, and I do think that that they need to be more than just let's meet and have lunch groups, because I do think this calling is important, and this calling needs to be grounded in who we are, and we're people of God's word. And so Scripture being an important part of engagement, not in a we always have to talk about Scripture kind of way, and we can't cut loose and go to a baseball game or something like that, but we can. But that we're intentional about the way we spend our time and resources and building each other up.
I love that. We could go on and on and on because this is just such good stuff. So it sounds like we're going to have a second part to this podcast. And so are you willing to continue?
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening to our podcast for today. Again, this is Reverend Leigh Anne Ring, who is the presbyter for relational care. And we hope that you're enjoying this conversation because there is more to come. And so on that note, you have a great, fantastic, super day and stay inspired.